All right, so I went through and deleted a bunch of stuff off my phone so that I would be able to make videos. That's actually the only thing that's holding me up from making the videos that I want, is that I don't have the memory card that I need, and I don't have enough memory on this phone to be constantly making the videos that I need to make. I just have like this little bit of space, and I don't necessarily want to delete a couple of the videos that I messed up with. I have to like go back through and like write everything down, like make bullet points of everything so that I can make a whole new video, and not lose any of the points or the information that I was trying to give or whatever. But anyways, um, this video I think is going to be about Joanna. I wanted to be able to get a ride out to the place where Joanna supposedly wrecked, so that I could film this from there. I don't have a car. I only know a few people with cars, and I really try not to bug them unless I absolutely have to. And I don't think anyone, well, there are other people who do care about this situation, but I hardly know any of them who actually have cars to get me out to wherever it was the spot that Joanna died was. But maybe eventually I can do that. You know what I mean? Make like an upgraded version of these videos. I don't know. But, or like make a part 3 eventually. I don't know. I have no idea. But I'm just going to sit in this kid's room and make a Joanna part 2 video. And that is to say that Joanna didn't drive. Joanna wasn't somebody who drove cars. I personally never saw Joanna drive a car. Now, that is not to say that Joanna never drove cars. It's just to say that no one that I know saw Joanna drive a car. In fact, everyone says Joanna didn't drive. I've had 4 different people tell me Joanna didn't drive, and that there's no way that Joanna was driving that car. And as I was saying, the last time I saw Joanna, she was sitting on that wall, and she looked almost like she was handicapped. Like somebody had messed her up to the point that she might not have, she had either been traumatized really severely, or somebody had done something to her physically to destroy her mind and body. But she was out there, and she wasn't trying to keep it a secret. It seemed like she was doing whatever she could to put herself out there and make herself available to anybody who might be driving by. And that even if no one stopped for her, that they at least saw the condition that she was in. Now, I'm not necessarily leaving off where I stopped in my last video, because as I was walking, and I knew that this was going to happen, but basically as I was walking, making that video, the first Joanna video, I was filming like the ground as I was going, and filming my surroundings and stuff as I was walking, and somebody that would be related to my ops showed up and picked me up, and as I was walking alongside the road, and I ended up chilling with her for a second, and going back to her house for a second, and realizing who all she was connected with, and then she would drop me back off in town, and I'd basically never speak to me again, even though she connected herself to me on Facebook and stuff. And when people do that, I give them a little while, and then I need to be deleting them, because I really hate when people connect with me just for a second so that they can hover over my Facebook page and watch my Facebook stuff, but just not say anything and never speak to me. That's really weird. Like, if you're not, like, if you're not actually even willing to speak to me or be cordial to me or affiliate with me in any way, then you really don't need to be my fake Facebook friend who's just watching everything that I do and you're not encouraging me in any way or adding to my life, or you know what I mean? You don't, and there's plenty of people who don't because they can't, you know what I mean? Not to say that we should all just add to each other's lives or whatever, but why are you hovering over my shit and hovering over my pages, hovering over my posts? And, you know, you're so concerned with my posts and what I say and do. But whenever I write to you or try to communicate with you, you're going to fucking ignore me. That's not okay. But anyways, so yeah, basically after I hit on the topic of Joanna, people were picking me up and acting funny, and then after hitting on the topic of Luke Stout publicly and in front of other people, I then had people who lived out the Abbott Road. And after I made a video addressing Josh Oberg and Gage and them, not addressing them, but addressing the death of Josh Oberg, I then had doofuses like Jedediah out on the Abbott Road trying to set me up, trying to lure me out to the Abbott Road, saying that they were trying to meet me on the Brushy Fork Road, but they were actually leading me out to the Abbott Road, which is where Luke and Josh were both taken, according to the rumors, and that Josh was tortured, potentially Luke, I don't know. Yeah, so right after I make those videos on here, then they have these doofasses, like, hitting me up and drawing me out there, acting like they have pot and shit like that. Well, you know, I traveled out there in the middle of the day. It's whatever, broad daylight, blah, you know, I'm not all cracked out like everybody else. I'm not, you know, and the dude basically had me meet with him and then just kind of left me out there in the middle of the Abbott Road. And I guess that was supposed to be scary, even though I'm an interstate hitchhiker who's by myself down dirt roads and all across the country by myself. So I'm super not scared that you would leave me alongside the Abbott Road. Oh God, I got left beside the Abbott Road. Whatever. So yeah, even though I didn't want anyone to have to drive me out there to meet with whoever I was meeting with and whatever was going to happen, which I was expecting to be able to get baked, you know what I'm saying? At least somebody burn down with me or something like that, smoke a fucking fatty or something. But everybody's, I guess they were luring me out there because they're mad that I'm talking about Josh and Luke or whatever. I could give 6 fucks less, you fucking meth head rednecks. Do not give a single fuck. The same thing goes with this topic about Joanna, because everybody surrounding this who's one of the bad guys, you guys are sex traffickers, you guys are complete trash. So I super don't give a fuck who gets mad about it. I don't fucking care. Super not okay for you guys to be abusing the mothers and children in this area or any area. So it's about time somebody spoke up about it. But yeah, so Joanna didn't drive. Everybody knew that Joanna didn't drive. So whoever wrote it up in the newspaper or whatever, that Joanna drove herself, whatever, they had it wrong. Of course, Joanna was not driving that vehicle. The driver of the vehicle, of course, left the scene. But before they left the scene, they, according to rumor, situated Joanna in a praying position, which I'm assuming was a way of making fun of her as she had just begun to go to church, and potentially along with how she just began to go to church. And a lot of the churches here are run by basically demonic entities and organizations, evil, which really sucks. And they do tie into the sex trafficking rings. At least one or two of them, if not more. So, anyways, it kind of seemed to me like Joanna was had realized basically how she had been controlled her whole life, and she was, and she'd already raised a kid by herself. She didn't need to just continue to be forced to stay in this whatever weird situation people were trying to keep her in. And basically what they do to the women, and it's not just around here, that's what they do to women everywhere, but they financially manipulate them, and they try to put a few handler dudes out there to distract them, or handler chicks or whatever, to people to distract you from the reality of the situation, which is that you might borderline be a slave, being abused, being controlled, being oppressed. The other people are basically running the show of your life, like that movie, The Truman Show. And for these beautiful women, especially the women who were straight up born beautiful, women like Joanna, who could have been supermodels, they could have been celebrities with how beautiful they are. And there's a lot of women in these small, there are a lot of little women, maybe not a lot of women, but for the handful or two or three or four of the beautiful, beautiful women in these small towns, especially, they are targeted. And they're targeted as much as they can be, each one of them. Basically, as much as each one will allow that others to manipulate and abuse and control and target them, that is how much they really will be abused. But then there's also people who it's not a matter of necessarily them letting them, as though they're just being submissive and allowing it, and complete understanding of what's going on. No, that's generally not the case. A lot of the women don't understand completely what's going on, and how can they? But for some of the ones that do, there's a lot of them who have this mistake in thinking that if they're just perfect, if they look better than the other women, if they act better than the other women, if they cook better than the other women, if they drive, if they're more resourceful, if they're more whatever, if they're more valuable somehow or in all these ways more than the other women, that somehow maybe they'll be spared. And that is not how it works either. In fact, the more beautiful you are, the more targeted you are, which is why you might see a lot of women walking around dressed like tomboys and not really fluffing themselves up and everything. It's actually, I would really like to make a video about this in particular. But it is how certain women will be abused to the point that they're afraid to dress themselves up, look nice. And a lot of them, and a lot of the women who were oppressed over the course of time, honestly just become too depressed to care. And the more that they doll themselves up, the more that they make it seem like they're trying to get attention from the opposite gender. And that is not always the case. This really is a town where the women are basically, the beautiful women and beautiful men are pulled aside to be of use to whoever has the most money and whoever has the most whatever. A lot of those people are pushed into drugs. Some of them around here especially are pulled into cults and covens. That's one of the aspects of this area. In comparison to the rest of the nation, it is one of the reasons why this area ends up being more dangerous than plenty of the other parts of the nation, because of the magic and the witchcraft, the baneful witchcraft and magic, the ritualistic practices, the animal and human sacrifices that go on here in this area in Appalachia. It ends up making this area even more dangerous than the inner cities, places like the Bronx, Chicago, Atlanta, Georgia, Dallas, Texas. All the Albuquerque, New Mexico. You know what I mean? Like I've listed, there's some actually pretty dangerous places, even though people might want to laugh because they think that they were in somewhere more dangerous. No, uh, there's there are areas where so much evil is practiced and demonic entities are summoned and straight up brutal multiple person sacrifices played out and recorded, and it ends up being way, way sicker, more demented, messed up shit than just the general crime that you would run into in the cities. Like, there's people in the cities, there are hoods that would not allow this to happen there. There are some hills have eyes things that happen out in these sticks, out in these mountains, that the city folk would not allow to happen in their hoods at all. I've seen stuff go on out in cornfields that the inner city projects in Pittsburgh or whatever, or Atlanta, they're not going to allow to go on there. I can't speak for the voodoo ghettos, though, because obviously that shit goes on down there. But this might even be nastier than that. And I don't know if Joanna was involved in anything like that. I can't say. But I will say that has an incredible reign over this area, and that it wouldn't be difficult to ask around and find out what Joanna and who Joanna was involved in. I was, in fact, shown a photo of the person who people think is responsible for the wreck that Joanna was, fatally and mortally wounded during. And after that person showed me the picture of that person, honestly, I'm convinced. Now, I'm not going to show you guys the picture, but I got the picture, and other people have the picture, and other people know. I only had to ask around a little bit, and there are a lot of people who genuinely liked Joanna. And there are a lot of gals who end up being victimized like this, not just here, but all across the world. And there are a lot of people who liked those gals. And they might have only been worth a dime a dozen to all of the spoiled people who have all the access to the money and the drugs and the whatever. But for those of us real people involved in their lives, those of us real people who have been around from the beginning or the middle or something like that, somewhere along the way, we actually liked Joanna. We liked Luke. And rumor has it that Joanna didn't want to be involved in the whatever anymore. That she realized that people had kind of forced her into the whatever her whole life, and that they'd shaped the world around her to ensure that all that she could do was the whatever. And it's really sad that we're pushed into the whatever when we're kids. But it sucks even more when we have to raise our own kids in the whatever. And we're so afraid to speak up about the whatever that we end up raising our kids until they're adults in the whatever. And we don't know how to teach them to grow up and stay away from the whatever because we're so busy pretending that we don't mind being a part of the whatever that we've been forced into. And then before we know it, our own kids are forced into the whatever. and their kids are forced to the whatever. And those of us who figure out what's going on and that we've been forced to the whatever, we try to speak up eventually to try to like save souls or, save our own kids. And nobody wants for the next generation or two to be cut out of the whatever. They feel like they need constant generational access. So if there's an adult who begins to have a problem with it and begins to worry or actually like be concerned for their kids or grandkids, they become a threat to the whatever system. And the whatever system oftentimes tries to regain that tight control over whoever that is. And if they cannot regain that control, then they will do whatever to injure them or make them handicapped so that no one will believe their testimony, so that they won't be able to be a witness. They won't be a viable witness, or they just get rid of them. And in this situation, because Joanna was so beautiful and so available for so long, and because there might have been such an abrupt shift for the first time ever, I can imagine how if somebody felt that they had complete and total full control over at least that one gal, that to see her switch up and to begin to defend herself and protect herself potentially for the first time in her entire life, I can imagine how that would have really upset somebody who was a monster with control, a narcissist, I mean, somebody who's completely ballistically out of control as far as narcissism goes. It's easy to fall a victim, especially when you're just one person alone, man or woman. And it's not good to have that mindset. You know what I mean? You don't necessarily want to have that mindset, like a victim mentality, but you also don't want to carry a mentality that is just like, oh, I'm this superhuman who no one can do anything to. Yeah, people can kind of do a little bit to you, but it is good to carry that mentality, I guess, that won't let it even be an option that anything would happen to you. But in order to understand the victimization felt and endured by some of these women, you're going to have to understand that some people can be made slaves. There can be slaves right out in the open. People can be held captive and under the control of others and be talking to you clear as day, just the same as I am right now. So, someone was mad at Joanna, and they got her in a car, and they drove the car really fast, apparently. And I'm assuming that they themselves had a seatbelt on, or something to that effect, and they were prepared for the crash, but she was not. And that this person wrecked the vehicle deliberately, as outlandish as that may seem. They then placed Joanna in a certain position, making it clear that there was someone else there and that it was a murder scene and a murder mystery rather than just a random car wreck. Because as I said before, and we'll repeat now, Joanna was apparently found with her hands praying like this. Now, if anyone at this point tries to tell me that that is not, in fact, how Joanna was found, I will think that you are lying to me. Because why is it and that isn't the first time that I've heard that. Why is that a rumor around here if that isn't true? So that's either a rumor because it leaked from the officers finding her like that, or it's a rumor because the person who set it up like that told people about it and they told other people, because it's just something no one would ever be able to keep their mouths shut about. And then that person either fled the scene or had someone pick them up directly after getting into that wreck, which would have meant that someone was following them and was in the vicinity and was prepared to pick this dude up after he wrecked her. And honestly, there are so many people who have so many different stories about what happened to Luke especially, but I have not actually met anyone who has different stories about what happened to Joanna. They all seem to, anyone who has any information about her, they all seem to have this same weird story or lineup of events. And you know, it's difficult for me to believe that certain things, ideas, whatever, have been investigated thoroughly when, how are you investigating them whenever all it takes for me is just to go out and ask questions. I just go ask questions to everybody. You wouldn't believe the information that I get. So it's really weird for me to think that there's an issue that anyone can't solve around here, because pretty much everybody knows what everybody does and everybody talks about everything. There's some things, of course, that are mysteries that nobody knows about here and there, because this is a very mysterious and weird place. This is all such a lunar type place. It's a place of darkness and secrets and strangeness and everything, and mystery and enchantment. I mean, these woods are full of weird enchantment, and it's really difficult to even describe what a strange place this is. Supposed to be elemental creatures in these woods and everything. The place that I am telling you about Joanna from is a very unique place, and Joanna was a very unique woman, even though she was very heavily controlled because she was so beautiful and amazing. And it's sad to me that the world may never know how beautiful and amazing Joanna was. Joanna is an example who echoes through to us about the control over women, even in very modern times. And we're all just so led to believe that women are not being controlled the way that they were before, and that we have equal rights and all that. No, that is not true. We live in a very patriarchal society where women are still being controlled very much. And when women fall out of control of the men, and when women stop giving their, energy and more over just for free to these people, and they actually start to take care of themselves and begin to develop standards. You know what I mean? Some of them for the first time in their lives. A lot of these women are kept in these hollers and abused from the time that they're infants. I mean, it gets bad. Some of these women are lucky to even make it to adulthood. They're lucky that their children even make it to adulthood. They're lucky to even see their children make it to adulthood. Like, it gets hard out here, you guys. Like, it's a little bit different than you guys have it in the city, because at least in the city, you're able to call upon each other in a different way. And it's like out here in the hollers, for these women especially, they're just kept with handlers. And that's how some of them are. They spend their entire lives like that, just like slaves. Only it's supposed to not feel like you're a slave. It's supposed to not feel like that, of course. And they do the same thing. They do the same thing to women all over the globe. It doesn't matter what ghetto they're in. It doesn't matter if they're in a white ghetto, a black ghetto, a Chinese ghetto. They're doing this. The Native American ghettos, all on the reservations, they do the same thing to the women on the reservations. As long as they can keep you guys, as long as they can keep the ladies pacified with, booze or, whatever other substances, as long as they can keep you around and keep you pacified with that stuff. They don't care what happens to your families. They don't care what happens to you. They don't care what happens to your kids. It's all about what they can get out of you in the moment. It's all about them getting your energy, them being a participant in your energy, getting as much of you as they want, using and abusing you, and tossing you to the wayside until they're ready for you again, or until they're ready to triangulate you with other women, or until they're ready to make an example of you, or until they're ready to take their anger and frustration out on you. It ends up not being mutually beneficial. In the beginning, middle, you know what I mean? People are really good at making things seem like they are mutually beneficial for these women, but the women are actually being financially manipulated and controlled, socially controlled, so that other people will benefit and gain from them, and they will be stuck there. They'll be stuck there with no legacy, nothing to show for their entire lives. They'll raise children on their own, and they'll hardly get a dime in child support. And if there is a dude around who they have to, deal with interchanging visits or having the dude get visitations with the kid, then you have to worry about the kids being taken by these redneck dads who are just brain dead and abusing them, assaulting them in all manner of ways, every different kind of abuse tactic there is. You got to worry about the fathers using the children as a way to abuse the parent, or just the dad just not being available at all, getting in trouble for various things, and just leaving the mom and children alone to survive on their own, and to have to protect themselves on their own. And in a lot of cases, especially around here and in the ghettos all over the world, they will get these women pregnant when they're teenagers or when they're very young, and it'll be their way of forcing those women to stay there. Now we've got you trapped by these kids. Now you're stuck at home. Oh, you got to stay at home, be a stay-at-home mom, and be a good mom, and do what you're supposed to do, and take care of your kids for the next 20 to 30 years. And we're going to have you pop out as many kids as you can, so that 20-year period starts over and over and over again. And that's how they're going to keep these women in prison, basically their whole lives, in prison to these men. And here you go. Now this woman had a kid, and she's still a kid herself, and now these guys have the next 20 years on her to spend trying to get her messed up on drugs and alcohol, and to prevent her from ever going to school, to prevent her from ever getting a job, to prevent her from ever working, to prevent her from ever driving, to prevent her from ever getting a driver's license, or being able to drive her own car. Sound familiar? Yeah, and what's really sick is that these guys are really like that. They're really like, they think that they mostly know that as soon as a woman gets away, that there's a chance that they could make it around somebody else who treats them better. And of course, if you have that choice between somebody who treats you like shit or who treats you well, of course you're going to want to steer towards the person who treats you better. You know what I mean? Or anyways, I don't want to talk too much more into that, because I could just go on and on and on about women and this abuse network. And you know, how these guys have created this abuse network globally, that they've learned how to do this. They've learned how to do this perfectly, generation after generation. They teach their dudes how to do this, and they force the women to live under this rulership. And, you know, whenever they get tired of us because we start going to church, or we don't want to play their games anymore, they do stupid shit like this occasionally. And it took a complete piece of shit psycho. It took a complete piece of shit psycho to do something like this to the woman who he did it to. But anyways, I wasn't Joanna's best friend or anything. I've hardly talked to Joanna our whole lives. I'm the last person that she probably would ever think would be on here defending her. I'm not saying that Joanna was a perfect person. I'm not saying that she was a perfect mom. I'm not saying anything like that. But she was still a fair and good enough person that I am going to speak up for her. And she is one of the homicides that have happened affiliated with Buckhannon that do have to do with this weird female control, weird shit here in Appalachia especially, which I'm going to call sex trafficking. She was part of a generation of women who were controlled, and it's a shame. I'm not going to call her a victim of that per se, but I am going to say that she was a victim of control, of unnecessary control. And in the future, if people end up connecting her to something, then, you know, you guys can, you know, dub her whatever you need to dub her. But she was still a part of my, even though she was this big of a part of my life, she was still a part of my life. And she was a life and a death that she was somebody who I actually ended up kind of caring about after she passed away. And I didn't know that I was going to care that much. Maybe it's only right that those of us who are out here, that we would care about each other like that. But yeah, I don't appreciate what you guys did to Joanna. I don't appreciate what you guys did to Luke. He wasn't my friend either. Not that the same people are involved. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that the same people are involved in each thing or whatever. Just the grand scheme of things. I don't appreciate what happened to Karina. There's a number of people who I don't appreciate what happened to. But Joanna especially, that's a real shame that you guys did that to Joanna. And I really know that she definitely didn't deserve something like that. And she was a cool enough person that there was no way, of course, that she would have been speaking up about what was going on, which is really sad. I can't imagine the kind of fear that she would have been put through. And I don't know. And I know that, like, there doesn't seem to be anywhere anyone is talking about Joanna. So I guess I'm just going to open this up. If anyone wants to talk about Joanna in the comments below this, I'll just go ahead and label this video Joanna Hunt Part 2. And if anyone has anything to say about Joanna, if people want to talk about her amongst each other, you guys can totally use the comments below this video to do that. And I'm sorry that there's no other better place. I feel like that society should give us a better system and a better place and a better way to come together and to talk about things like this, and to talk about those people who have passed away, and what did we know about them, and what did we know about their lives, and what did we know about their deaths. And you know, this is, I guess, one way that you got a small little place to do that, because you know, no one else is really providing us that place. And what an interesting idea that would be. And as far as snitching, ratting, all that shit goes, honestly, we're talking about a homicide here. We're talking about potentially a mean, nasty, unnecessary homicide that was only just to be mean and nasty. So it's not really the same thing as telling on someone for, drugs or whatever. This would mean nasty homicide. Life is a sacred thing. People should not die in certain ways. That's just all there is to it. There's certain ways that people are, ways that people are eliminated that are just foul, that are wrong, that universe and God are not okay with, that the whole planet is not okay with. And basically all of the homicides that I have brought up on my Weird Pseudo channel here are homicides that were foul and wrong, and that were totally unnecessary, and that were cruel, like beyond the level of cruelty. And so that's what I feel from this situation, is that there was some unnecessary, stupid cruelty involved. And the only person who would have been cruel, the only people or person that would have been cruel to Joanna would have had to have been somebody who was just a complete psychopathic piece. Just somebody who was just complete, arrogant, ignorant, just a terrible, terrible human being. Yeah, who we definitely would not need around. Just saying. Buckhannon definitely needs fewer of those. The whole world could use fewer of those. Super sad about Joanna. I feel sad for all the women around here who feel trapped. For any women around here who feel like they're in a situation and they're trapped and there's no way to speak up and there's no way to get help. I know what that's like, living out here especially, and how horrible and painful that can be, especially when you have kids. And, a lot of people don't know what that's like. A lot of people have that idea that, just because we're adults, that we should be able to hold our own. And that's cool and everything. But when you're a single female and you have cruel, weird, psychopathic, grown-ass dudes and all their little nasty gang and organization and cult members all working together to do heinous stuff to you, it gets complicated. It gets horrible. It does get difficult to defend oneself, and it gets old. People will deliberately put you through a lot, move you to the point of exhaustion. They do try to wear us out here. They try to make sure that we don't have what we need. And there is a pull to try to get people to use and, to, sell themselves and everything. And in such an impoverished area, you're going to see a lot of people who are turning to that, who really feel like there is no other way. They really feel like there's no way out and there's no way to get what they need, and that they're stuck here, that they're trapped. I mean, there's a lot of people, and women especially, single mothers, who here especially in this city, they describe feeling absolutely trapped and isolated. And it's a strange thing, but it's very possible that, people could be trafficked right in place, right from their apartments, right from their homes, and have no control over their own lives. People do live like that. And entire towns and cities can be controlled like that. All that it takes in this situation is for one gender to maintain control over another gender. And I've seen it happen on Indian reservations. I've seen it happen in white ghettos. I've seen it happen in every different color ghetto and every different race. And it is a problem. And the women and children really do need defended. And being able to remember back to those people who we knew who were victims, and to be able to look at their lives and to see what was wrong there, I would hope that we're able to take examples like Joanna's and prevent that life from happening to the next generation or the next generation or the next generation, because it certainly shouldn't be this repeating cycle for these women to be born into these patriarchal societal areas where they're just pushed into drugs and sex in their fucking teen years, and they're just only used for that their entire lives until they're red rummed. Like, come on now, like this cannot just be what life is like for all these beautiful glowing baby girls who are born every year. These cannot just be the plans that you have for them. You know, please let these women live out full lives. You know, please stop controlling them and making them only your little slaves. It's absolutely horrible, and you guys don't have any appreciation for them at all. You had no appreciation for this woman her whole life. For you to just catapult her out of a window like that, or get wreck and have her thrown from a vehicle and stuff like that. There's no appreciation there. And that's what I've seen. That's what I see all across the U.S. is just no appreciation. These dudes have no appreciation for these women whatsoever. Like, the little bit of appreciation they put on is a show. They switch up on a chick like that. It's like day and night. There's almost no one who's actually a protector out here. There's almost no one defending and protecting the women, I'm telling you. Almost everyone is using and controlling these situation and these women and their kids and stuff. It's really bad. Society's really, really bad right now. There's too many people in these cult gangs, organizations, groups, covens. Everybody wants to be Ted Bundy, and so now it's everybody's Ted Bundy, and all the women are just like having to figure it out on their own and protect themselves. There's just nobody out there there's just nobody out there. The men have apparently lost their, what is it called? Their chivalry. Their chivalry. The men have lost their chivalry. Where have all the cowboys gone? You know that Sheryl Crow song? It's like that, only worse. I believe biblically it's called the end days. I didn't realize that it was basically just going to be only chick dudes holding the stuff down. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't realize that, like, basically it's just going to be chicks trying to defend things in the end times. But it's kind of what it looks like. So anyways, Joanna didn't get into a car wreck. She wasn't driving. Someone else drove the car, and they wrecked her deliberately because they were upset because she didn't want to be a part of the whatever anymore. And they also, I think people were beginning to take interest in other relatives of Joanna's, and they knew that she might actually put her foot down and begin to take protective and precautionary measures, potentially to protect the other people in her family, knowing what she knew and having the experiences that she had. And to prevent that from ever happening, people did that to her. And it's really a tragedy, and it's a shame. And people are afraid to talk about it because they have also been controlled by the great whatever this entire time. And I understand that because I have also fallen underneath the control of the great whatever. Maybe I'll do a tarot reading for her. I don't know. But rest in peace, Joanna. Speak to us from beyond the grave if you need to. And I really do feel that these people who were killed in the very, very wrong way, in all these very wrong ways, that they are all grouped up, that they're all they're all in a group of people in the afterlife, and they're in a group of people who are working together to try to protect the people who are still in this area alive right now. And there are several of them, and Luke Stout is one of them. Joanna is one of them. There are people who died in the wrong ways, and they don't want for other people to die in the wrong ways. And so even though it's a scary subject, these are scary things that the people around here are terrified and scared to speak up on, that some of them absolutely will not speak up about it. And that is exactly why these people who have passed on, that's exactly why God allows their spirits to affect the living, because, excuse me, because they don't want these spirits who have passed over, they don't want the same thing to happen to us. They don't want for us to go down and to be hurt so devastatingly and so tragically the way that they were. And it really is a great suffering and great tragedy that those people didn't deserve. No matter what it was, there's just, there's some punishments don't meet whatever silly crimes people come up with. Um, a lot of these people were overly punished for alleged mishaps or uh, misunderstandings or mistakes. But anyways, peace and love. God bless.